Welcome back to Lex Talk About It, another one of our mini interviews. This one with the lovely guest Ace, who I have had the pleasure of speaking with in private, and who you might recognize from Dilly and Dally. Ace, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, it's me, Ace or Ash, whichever you want to call me. I can be found on _queer on all the major social media sites, specifically Twitter and TikTok, where I'm most active. So follow me over there. If being Black, queer, an activist, or anything cool like that is one of your passions or something that you just care about or advocate for, I am published award-nominated streamer here on Twitch.
Period. Give it to him. You gotta flex it. You feel
me? It's Saturday.
Okay? Period. And so you are joining us with Fig, correct? You will
Absolutely.
be serving in that capacity. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Fig and why it is so important to you and the community at large?
Right. So Fig is going to be having me on as the grant writer, which is pretty cool. Fig, we're going to be looking for grants to help marginalized creators to really, be who they want to be as a creator without a financial holding. So we'll be helping them financially and emotionally and everything else that they need in order to create their content and to be focused solely on that content. I think that's most notable or most needed in this space because a lot of marginalized creators, whether you're Black, just POC in general, disabled, what have you, don't have the financial needs to create the content that they deserve and they're proud of. So Fig is, comes into the gap for that to help propel your future.
Yeah. And it is it's really important when we think about these things and we talk about these things because everybody looks at people who stream and they're like, oh, that's such an easy job. All you have to do is play games all day. No, it's fucking work for anyone, period. But if we have somebody sitting in perfect privilege, like we have this cis het white man sitting playing his games, whatever, that's still hours of work. That's research into games. That's, all of that stuff. And so then if we take degrees away from that, all right, now it's a white woman, so automatically misogynistic comments, people, she has to really think about what she wears on stream, otherwise she's going to get comments like this and comments like that. Then we remove another degree, it's a Black woman or it's a queer so the further away we get from that perfect privilege of being a cishet white man, the harder it gets to create and exist in this space. I mean, just a couple of months ago, we were seeing all of those hate raids happening to marginalized creators and Twitch doing nothing about it.
Absolutely. I think you bring up great points, especially with the movement against to empower Twitch to do better, #Twitch do better, right? I've been working with Color Change, which is a national organization that works to advance the rights and just privileges of Black people. And they have been monumental in the movement itself because they've been working with certain Black creators to create content on behalf of Twitch Do Better, Wreck-It Ravens campaign, which has been really cool. I was in New York City filming for them an interview on how I was affected by the hate raids, and that should be coming out this month, if I'm not mistaken.
Awesome.
And they had a session a couple weeks ago where 5 Black creators, myself included, co-hosted with them, just having a night of Black joy. We had over 80 Black creators in a Discord call just playing different games together. So really trying to, amplify Black joy, even when we are very upset with this platform in general.
And that's a conversation that I've had before, Indigenous joy, Black joy, that in and of itself is an act of revolution. And that's kind of a twofold thing, right? Where it's great to be able to, just exist and have that joy because, our ancestors didn't get to. Right. But on the other hand, it's me experiencing joy shouldn't be an act of revolution. Like, we should just be able to enjoy ourselves. It shouldn't be revolutionary that we get to enjoy things.
Absolutely.
And but it's a fucking act of revolution, because, you know, if you live on res, then your likelihood of getting clean water is much lower, especially if you live in Navajo Nation. You know, it's much harder for Black families and Black people to build up generational wealth, because they are intentionally kept out of that fucking club. Like, I've talked about in the past, like, the way that school systems are set up is inherently racist and classist. Like, you know, schools get funding based on the property taxes of the people in that area. Oh, well, guess who historically can't own property or has a harder time owning property, especially nice property? Black people, indigenous people, like immigrants.
Right.
Like, you can't, like, there's so much that needs to be an overhaul. And like, number one is just our attitudes in general, and like the attitudes of allies and non-allies alike, because the amount of times, literally just recently in the production that I was doing, there was a moment where I corrected somebody on my pronouns, and like, it seemed fine, and like we had moved on. But then we were at the rap party, and she wanted to come up to me and tell me how, like, how much she never would do something like that, how much she never would want to harm me, and how she's such a good ally. And it's like,
Her, nothing about you.
like, girl, like, first of all, we have been moved on from it, mama. Like, why are you bringing it up again? Clearly, you've been sitting on it and not feeling good about it. Your feelings are not my responsibility.
Absolutely.
Like, first and foremost, and like, your feelings are nobody's responsibility. Somebody can elicit an emotional response from you. Like, somebody can trip over a trigger. Somebody can, you know, say something a curt type of way and make you feel a type of way. But your emotions are still your responsibility, and your reaction to them is still your responsibility.
Absolutely.
And so, like, just because you don't feel good about what happened doesn't mean you have to make it my problem, because it's not on me to make you feel better about how I made sure you understood who I was and how I operate.
Right. I mean, the one thing that I always say every time that I do something like this is that intent doesn't equal impact. You can have one intention, but the impact is vastly different than what you intended it to be. You don't hold power over someone's impact. That is someone else's. We have to be careful day to day just to not even hold in other people's emotions or be responsible for that, because we're going to continuously re-traumatize ourselves as marginalized individuals and humans nonetheless. We were talking about mental health before we got on this call. Mental health is very important. And one thing that I've learned when like focusing on my mental health is that I cannot hold myself accountable, responsible, or in power of how someone else chooses to react to a situation that I may have or may not have put them in.
Yeah.
What we can do as people is just take however they are, take them for who they are. And if we want to move forward with that person in our lives, don't continuously re-traumatize them. Apologize, right. Move forward, and let them hold the conversation that they need to hold within themselves and with us to move forward positively or negatively.
Yeah. And like, I 100% agree. Like, I've talked about it on my podcast before, is like, I definitely, you know, I definitely care to hear where someone is coming from on things, right, because that gives me a fuller picture of everything. But it doesn't necessarily matter. Like, yes, if you've hurt me and my feelings, or if you've, you know, hurt somebody or whatever, like, if that wasn't your intent, sure, you can let me know. So that lets me know whether or not it's worth continuing this impact that has to be dealt with. And whether you're a part of dealing with that impact or not, like, depends on the situation. Like, and that's the other thing, is like, sometimes when a thing happens and you have an impact that you did not intend, you sometimes can't be the one to alleviate it. All you can do is say sorry and get out of the way while they deal with it themselves, or other people deal with it. Like, it's not all like you can. And I love to look at Moana, the movie, for this, because like, we look at how, you know, Maui could not return the heart because he's the one who traumatized her. He can't be the one that heals her.
You can't break my heart that you broke. Like,
right. Like, yeah, like there's this there's a huge impact that you can have without realizing it, and intent matters to a degree, but your intent does not overwrite the actual impact that was had.
Exactly.
And I think that's what a lot of people don't get. Like when they make these genuine mistakes and then they try to over explain and talk over you. And like literally, I was just trying to vibe at a fucking rap party. And here's this white womaning all over me. Like, hey, this was already handled. And now you want me to handle your feelings about it. Mm-hmm. Not my responsibility. Talk to your therapist, talk to your preacher.
Exactly. And I feel like that's the, like, relating it back to Twitch, we have to remember that, like, we can't hold ourselves accountable for what Twitch doesn't do.
Right.
There's a lot of advocates that get very upset and it messes with their mental health. And that is valid. It's a valid response to have it mess with your mental health. When you care so much about something and you're not getting the result that you want to have, valid. But I urge and employ every advocate or just human being in general to try to separate the two. When you're at your computer and you're advocating for Twitch do better, please, please, please step away at some point to take care of you, the individual, because you can't advocate for anyone if you're half-assing yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like and we see that in spheres all over the place. Like just recently with Pipeline 3, one of our water protectors, a two-spirit individual, Northwind, he had been growing out his hair, and at the end of it, cut his hair off, but in mourning, because he felt that he had not done enough for the water and for the water protectors and for the land. And so he was taking, all of it incredibly personally. Mm-hmm. And at least that's my understanding. He and I haven't had a discussion about it. But from what he, shared, that's what I gleaned from it. And it's like, baby, it wasn't solely on your shoulders. It's not that you didn't do enough. You did all you could. What it's down to is these are systems that are out of our hands. Should they be? No, because reservations are sovereign land and governments should not be saying anything can happen on them. But here we are, and you did everything you could. And like, it's similar with Twitch. It's similar with advocacy in any capacity. Like because we care so deeply about these things, when things fail or things don't go the way they're supposed to, or the way we think they need to in order to get to our next step, like we take it incredibly personally, and we start wondering, okay, well, what am I not doing? Clearly I'm not doing enough because this isn't happening, and so on and so forth. And it's like, baby, no, that's not it. Like, it's just that, like, you are one person, you are one group, it's no group has gained rights. Like, if we look at civil rights, if we look at anything like that, no group has gained rights because of the actions of one group or one individual. It's been multiple groups working for the betterment. It's been multiple individuals working for the betterment. And it's down to the fact that I think a lot of people get overwhelmed and desensitized. It's a reason why I don't share a lot of those graphic images of violence against Black folks and violence against Indigenous people, because all it's going to do is re-traumatize the people who belong to those groups and desensitize the people who need to be seeing it. Like, because at the end of the day, that's what happens. Like, people are like, oh yeah, somebody else got, police brutality. Somebody else got tear gassed at a protest. Oh, well, that's the time we live in, where it's like, girl, no. So like, my shift, instead of like sharing those graphic images and stuff like that, is like, I talk about the real world impact. Like I pull up the statistics, I pull up, the projected futures, and like, we were indigenous people and environmentalists were talking about, the future of warfare isn't nuclear, it's water, it's land, it's resource, because that's so much more subtle. Because if we go on a grand scale with warfare, it's mutually assured destruction because so many people have fucking nukes. But if you do things like poison the water supply, then it's much more subtle. And guess what? The Navy did that and lied about it for months. And, it back on mental health, it gets to this point where it's like, at what point is my sense of doom and dread and my constant anxiety, at what point is that my mental illness or just being aware of the times that we're living in? It's, and so like trying to come and have an escape in gaming or in, whatever. And then to have people hate rating you there. Like, this is supposed to be my escapism. This is supposed to be my cute little dissociative moment where I don't have to live in the actual reality. Right. And so things like Fig are going to help us, not only get the funding to put out quality content, but also not to feel afraid or obligated to engage with stuff like that, because that's a huge part too. Is a lot of the time we as marginalized people have the burden of education on ourselves. Like, a lot of the times I'm the only two-spirit person somebody's ever met. A lot of the time, they've never seen somebody who expresses the way I express or use they, them pronouns. So I have to have a whole fucking gender discourse with somebody. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I'm just trying to wear a cute skirt and go get a fucking latte, bro. Like, I'm not trying to have gender theory conversations right now.
Right. And there are literally people that get paid for that. I had a conversation last week, and for my team, Queer Sauce, we had a collaboration with Zero Cancer, a national organization, to end prostate cancer. And I spoke to their VP of Health Equity on my stream. He's a Black gay man. And we talked about advocates and whether, like, in the professional state, if it's okay to like reach out to your employees and ask them certain things about like, oh, being Black, being this. And, some people have their affinity groups at work. Like, they have like a women's group, a Black group, whatever. But how important is that, and how much change should they be making? Because at the end of the day, you are re-traumatizing these individuals in order to have some professional gain. Oh, we did this, but we had the backing of the women's group. We have the backing of the pride group. We have the backing of this. Please remember that we have individuals that literally get paid as diversity consultants, i.e. myself, to talk about these things, shameless plug, to talk about these things at choice, and don't re-traumatize people for free. Because if you're going to re-traumatize me, you're going to pay for it.
Right. Like, that's the whole thing, is like, there are like, it is one thing when I am putting myself in the space of being an educator. Like, when I step into an episode of Lex Talk About It, that's one of my heavier topics. Like, if I am stepping in to talk about being in a male body and being the survivor of multiple sexual assaults and what that looks like, I am preparing myself for that and to have those conversations. If I am stepping into a role to talk about sex education, I'm preparing myself for potential personal questions. And I can always be like, that's too personal. We're not talking about that. This is a clinical talk about this. But like, and you have Indigenous people who are like positioning themselves as cultural educators. And so it's completely different for you to look at a TED Talk or go to a workshop that's led by somebody who is literally putting themselves in the position to educate than it is for me to correct you on my pronouns and you to ask me about, this, that, and the third's fucking gender identity. Like, I have people all of the time asking me about, oh, well, my son, is starting to, show interest in makeup and blah, blah, blah. Do you think he's, and I'm like, ma'am, this is a Wendy's. Like, I'm not here to speculate about your child's gender experience or expression. Like, if your son wants to experiment with makeup, fucking let him experiment with makeup. I get that it can be scary as a parent because you know what the world is like, but also it's a lot less scary for your child if they know that their home is a safe place.
Right.
because I did not have that growing up. I did not have a safe space at home or at school or anything like that. And so like I'm still dealing with the repercussions of that now. So if you can just allow your child to be your child and to do what they want to do and just support them and like give them the finer points, like that's fine. And guess what? Therapy exists for a reason, not just for your kid, for you. Like, you know, like it's not, therapy isn't this thing that exists for people, only for people who have mental illness. It exists for people who need a professional, unbiased ear.
Right. And therapy is good for any and everyone. Like you said, it's not just for people that have diagnoses. Like at the end of the day, I had to realize in my own personal life, my friends are not my therapists. Mm-hmm. And if I go to them and I talk to them about the same thing over and over and over again, there's no progress. Now you're just literally sitting on my couch listening to me talk. It's okay to go to your friends and talk to them about issues, but if there's no solution, then what the hell? A therapist is a paid individual that takes your shit and like breaks it down with you. So making sure that you have that support system is equally as important as having your friends and family there for the happy things too.
Right. It's like, you know, we talked a little bit about this when I was talking with Amber, and it's like, I would love to be able to always be there for my people, whatever they needed, no matter what. But I would end up killing myself because, you know, for all of the things that I can't fix, I would feel guilty about not being able to help them with that. And then I'm dealing with my own shit on top of that. Like, that's not fair to you, your friend, or your relationship. Like it is completely fine to commiserate and to, you know, do all of that. Like misery loves company isn't about miserable people wanting other people to be miserable. It's about when you're down in the depths of it, having people trying to cheer you up instead of just sit in it with you for a minute is like, because often that's what I need. I don't need you to try to cheer me up. I just need you to like sit and eat bad junk food and watch terrible movies and just like be present there. Like misery loves company doesn't mean you want to make other people miserable. It means, hey, I need to know that when I'm going through the depths of this, you're not going to disappear because I'm not fun.
Oh, fuck. Yo, you hit something because that's exactly what happened to me with my content. So I'm going through a lot of medical things, which I don't mind sharing, but it all started with going to the OBGYN for my annual checkup. But yeah, like I went to the OBGYN and it was very dysphoric. And I realized like since coming out as non-binary, that was the reason I never liked going to them. And they did that procedure that they have to do annually and it messed me up. It's the first time I'm talking about it like so openly. I hope that's okay.
I am fine to receive whatever you would like to share. Yes.
But like, so that whole thing happened and I was unable to walk for like a week. And then I found out I was diagnosed with certain things throughout that week. Yesterday, I was diagnosed with having an ovarian cyst on my right ovary. That is a scary thing for me to hear, right? So with going through all of that for the last 2 weeks, I've chosen to step away from creating content because I'm not at my happiest. And when I am at my happiest through all these dark things, it's when I'm offline with friends, not having to worry about a chat, not having to worry about holding on to other people's emotions, not putting myself at risk for being hate rated or what have you. So at this current moment, it is so important that I step away and focus on me because I'm scared that if I do nothing but put out sad content for a month, a week, or whatever have you, however long this depressive episode lasts, that my community would leave.
Right.
So you just definitely hit something right there for me.
Yeah, like that's a thing that I've dealt with. Like people, that's a thing that has happened to me in my life. Like people have realized like my depressive episodes and my sadness aren't something that they're going to fix or is ever going to go away. Like I've lost partners because of it, like, you know, because people have this messed up idea that, oh, well, if you're happy in your relationship or your friendship or whatever, like that should fix it. Like that's not how it works. My brain broke. Like and so like knowing that and that's really what it is. It's I have to know that I can share with you without you making it about you and without you feeling like, you know, there's nothing, you know, because, and like I had this conversation with Amber as well. It's like, I can't, there's so often I want to share things with family members or friends, but I can't, because I'm so worried about it. It's going to turn into me having to unpack their feelings about my situation.
Yes, absolutely. So I mentioned earlier, I'm an immigrant. So being born and raised in Jamaica is a lot as a gay person, because it's a very homophobic country. It has
Oh, yeah.
changed. So I was raised in the church. I was raised in that country. I came here twice, when I was 7 and when I was 9. But that doesn't matter, because I was still within the Jamaican culture at my mother's house.
Right.
So I wasn't able to choose how I came out. I came out by accident. But to this day, there are still certain conversations I will not have with my mother, because I know it's going to be more about her than me. Mm-hmm. And I don't have the time to come out for two people. Mm-mm. And my family still doesn't accept me, but I'm okay with that, because at this point I accept me. You know, and that in itself took a lot, because being born into that culture, I was homophobic, transphobic, and all those things myself. Like that ass though. You know what I'm saying?
No, like for real.
Like why would you kiss another girl? Like that's crazy. Like, why are you trans? Like, I'm not understand. Well, now look at me, bitch. Like, what's happening? Like, now I'm non-binary lesbian. Like, okay, but I don't know, like, but how different would my path have been if I was accepted in that household? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, and I think about it a lot too. Like, you know, as someone who's, you know, two-spirit, like I'm actively seeking out like affirmative procedures. Like, I'm going to be getting all of my like shoulder and back hair removed. I'm getting it all removed for Christmas. It's a little Christmas gift to myself. But I do wonder, like, what was it like pre-colonization? Because two-spirit people and like most tribes had something like that, or an analog for that. And like, if we didn't have colonization, what would gender affirmation look like? Would I even feel the pressure to do these things? Or because I would be just so readily accepted, would I even care that I have body hair? Would I even care that my hips aren't as round as I think they should be? Like, you know, like how much has colonization and genocide and enslavement affected our mindset as a whole, as a culture? And like, it's something that I think about often, and I all the time, and I'm sitting here thinking these things. I'm like, nobody thinks what I think.
No, I definitely do. And that's why conversations like this, they're so important, because people have that thought. No one gives a fuck. Like, unless you're angrily advocating on Twitch and Twitter, no one cares. Like, yes, we're always advocates through and through, but this conversation wasn't rooted in the trauma. It was rooted in just building an organic connection and having people listen to this conversation. I can't even stress enough how important that is, to make sure that other people know they're not alone. And that goes back to your point of like, if you didn't feel alone as a result of all these movements, it's interesting to me that individuals don't realize what these movements have done to us. Because you're right. If they didn't happen, would we just be humans? And we wouldn't have to self-identify in these various ways, you know what I mean? To feel so empowered in who we are.
Yeah, like it's fucking wild. And I think we've made up for a little bit of the lost time, but we are definitely going to have to continue this conversation on a full episode of Lex Talk About It.
Yes.
In the meantime, let everybody know once again where they can find you, darling.
Absolutely. So like I said earlier, my name is Ace or Ash, whichever you want to call me. I am A_typical_queer on all major sites, most notably on Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok. So follow me if you like Blackness, queerness, non-binariness, or just advocacy in general, because I'm your person.
Period. And as always, you can find me on... As always,
Sorry.
Period. You can always find me on Lex Stop Talking on Twitter. You can find me on my podcast, Lex Talk About It, anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also find me here on the Novi channel. Just be prepared for a lot of screaming about Indigenous issues, BIPOC and like Black, Indigenous, people of color issues at large, mental health things, queer ass shit. Like if you like that stuff, yeah, drop a follow.
Oh yeah.
Take care of yourselves, be kind, and know that the only thing you owe anyone is the kindness that you owe yourself.
I love that.
Hi, welcome in. And welcome back to another short installment of Lex Talk About It with me, your host, Lex, as always. I am joined by Ryan. Ryan, please introduce yourself to the people.
Yeah, so I am the founder of Reamlwarp Media, which is a fantasy and sci-fi multimedia company. We're focusing on TTRPG content right now. And I've been doing that since about late 2017. Started off on the DMs Guild, kind of migrated to Drive-Thru RPG and Kickstarter, which is where I'm at now. And now I'm kind of focusing on kind of mentoring other people and helping BIPOC and LGBTQ people kind of find their voice in the industry because they don't have enough of a one.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because like you'd think that we did like so many Black, Indigenous, like Asian, like just so many people of color have been so instrumental in the stories that people want to tell in TTRPGs.
Yeah.
Like you've got the whole like sort of mystic Orientalism that happens with monk classes. And I talked earlier today about how a lot of the races, not only in D&D, but in TTRPGs as a whole, like a lot of the races who are more tribal in nature, there's a little bit of anti-Indigenous sentiment cooked into those. Like they tend to be more savage. They tend to get into kind of like the magical Indian tropes. You get a lot of that sort of situation there. Not even talking about the anti-Blackness that pervades like orcs and stuff like that within D&D. Like, there's so much that they want to use and they don't want to listen. And so I'm super excited always. It looks like, hang on. We have a very special guest for a very special second. We have a giveaway to do. Oh my goodness.
Hi. We're going to give away a whole bunch of stuff. Reamlwarp here has donated a huge bundle. It is like,
oh my God.
It is 22 books. 22 D&D fabulous books. Yeah.
Holy
it is
shit.
Crazy. You're
we
crazy, Brian.
While people are entering for the giveaway, let's run through what those books are. 22.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know if I can remember what they all are.
You were like, that box, take it. I don't know.
Yeah. Am I running through that or?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Run through it.
Okay.
It's yours.
Okay.
You wrote them.
Yeah. Okay. True. So a lot of them have to do with my Cities of Myth kind of campaign world, which right now consists of kind of a campaign world of Fallen Camelot and Atlantis. So there's two main campaign settings and then a bunch of expansion packs. We have giants, extra subclasses, magic items. And that's probably like, I don't know, 10 at least of the products.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm super excited about Fallen Camelot because it happens like 100 years after the fall of Camelot. And it's just, oh my God, it's so fabulous.
And Morgana's on the throne and she's just like come take it from me, boys. And
First of all, I gotta say, I will never not have a hard on for Morgana. I love her.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. And so all of those products are predominantly written by people who I brought on who are LGBTQ or BIPOC, especially people from the backgrounds that we're creating from.
Mhm.
And then we have things like Dragons, Delvins, and Dives, which kind of rips off Guy Fieri a little bit. Lots of quirky. Yes, he would love it. Lots of quirky dragons and dragon lairs. We have Perks and Pains, which is like extra role-playing feats for your characters to take. We have Tavern Games, just like other
I really like the mobility device.
Yes.
I thought was really important. That was really fabulous.
Have, a short product about ways to introduce magic mobility devices and also how to create them yourself for your own game. So a lot of this is stuff we've worked with on other creators. They partnered with me, and it's all focused on inclusivity and representation.
We love them. All right, I love it. Let's do this. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Already. Oh my God. All right, we're gonna pick this. We're gonna pick it. All right, who gets it? Who gets it? Who's it gonna be? Who's it gonna be? Is Flizzard Gaming.
Yay!
Yay! Flizzard was actually the very first person in chat this morning when we started.
Oh,
So yes, yay!
Thank you for hanging out, Flizzard.
I love it.
That's so awesome.
It makes me so happy. All right, you guys have a fabulous conversation.
Thanks,
I'm
Kyle.
gonna dip out.
Yeah, so let's get into that. Like, let's get into the mythology of it all and like bringing on, like, yeah. So talk to me about it, because first of all, Atlantis.
Yeah,
my gay little heart. Soars.
Atlantis is super gay. We have a lot of like poly and LGBTQ art.
As you should.
In the product. And the whole island is just like, we love everybody. We don't, we're not restricted to gender, which was really enriching for me to be able to see writers write that, because I'm relatively new to this advocacy. And so every time I work with a new team, I learn something new. New perspectives and all that. So it was really edifying to be able to work with a team that could really bring that to life in a way that I never could. So yeah, Atlantis is amazing.
And I do want to say, like, I think that that's also very much a thing to like be wary of as well. Like, so many times we're like, when someone sits in a place of privilege, but they, are somebody who is connected to marginalized people and wants, recognizes that there's a need for those stories. So often the drive can be, oh, well, I guess I should write it since I have the audience. I should be willing to write it. And it's like, sometimes you need to just direct your audience to somebody who has the knowledge to write that.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what we're trying to do with the upcoming mythology stream. So starting in January, we're looking for people from non-Eurocentric backgrounds, so indigenous from any country, BIPOC, etc. And we want them to tell their stories, and we want them to put their stories in a D&D adventure, just a one shot. And then we're gonna sell it for them, and they get a considerable amount of the profits, as much as we can reasonably give them. Right. So I started out doing D&D kind of for myself, just to explore my own creative outlets. But I realized that being in the position that I am, super non-marginalized, super privileged, like I needed to not speak for marginalized people, but give them the voices that they needed. So I do that as much as I can. Atlantis was a big step towards that, and this mythology stream will be as well. And yeah, and I believe Fig is launching soon as well.
Yes, we are building Fig up. That's the whole point. Like, go ahead and exclamation point charity. That's what we're raising money for today. Yeah, like that's the whole point, is to have this kind of cycle of uplifting each other and finding new voices, whether they be Black, Indigenous, Asian, queer, trans, disabled. Like, it's all about lifting those people up. And yeah, that's another, like, that's one thing that I find very interesting, is like including disability in games. Because it's not something you see a lot of. The closest I think I've ever seen to it was a campaign that Brennan Lee Mulligan ran, where it wasn't necessarily disability, but they did sobriety. So he had, so two of his characters, one was a recovering alcoholic and one was a recovering drug addict. And so they had worked with substance abuse counselors to build a system on how to do that. And so they would have to roll for certain things, like, okay, like this is one of your triggers, do a sobriety roll, which was really interesting. And so, yeah, like, let's talk a little bit about including disability in your game, because we were talking about you having mobility moments.
So about a year ago, someone came to me. They said, I have this mobility product. I think you can probably move it a little better than I can, get more audience on it. And it was definitely in line with my mission. So I said, yeah, let's, I purchased all the art and did all the layout and stuff for it. And yeah, we need more people to see it. This was right around the time when the combat wheelchair came out. Which was a big thing on Twitter.
I remember seeing that,
bigger thing than it should have been, of course. But so we just wanted to add our voice to that. And the author did a great job. It's like 10 pages maybe, but there's so much packed in there. There's different magical mobilities. And I think the real value is in talking about, like, why we need to put them in there, and how to kind of come up with your own. Because I think we get more done together than we get done apart. So as cross-sectional as we can be, we need to be.
Yeah. Well, and I think also, like, abled people labor under the assumption that disabled people inherently would prefer to be abled. And it's like, I honestly don't know many autistic people who want to have the same brain as a neurotypical person. What they want is understanding. I don't know a lot of deaf people who would prefer to be hearing. Like, there's a whole but there's a whole culture in deafness, and Niall DeMarco talks about it all the time. He's like, I come from a completely deaf family. All of my siblings are deaf. My parents are deaf. My grandparents are deaf. Like, I would not want to be hearing. Like, I don't care about that. What I care about is being understood and being accepted. And I think a lot of abled people assume that when a disabled person sits down at a tabletop, they're going to do this high fantasy of, like, being able-bodied. And no, not necessarily. Like, they may want to have their wheelchair in game, but they can't because there's not a mechanic for that.
Yeah. One thing I'm excited about is I'm working with someone who has disabilities, and she is leading a team to produce a product called Explorer's Guide to Disability. And it is basically taking our Cities of Myth settings and saying, hey, this is how you can explore Camelot, or this is how you can explore Atlantis within the worldview of disability. So autism spectrum, or prosthetics. Those are all things that we're covering in that product. That's a ways away yet from being finished, but I'm excited that I was just able to find people who were willing to work with me on bringing that to life.
Yeah, like it's something that's definitely needed. And yeah, it's something that we have to change our attitude about a lot too, because like I had this conversation on an episode as well of like, when we're GMing and we're doing things, like we have to be cognizant, like sometimes you're doing stuff and body horror becomes a part of that, but we have to be cognizant of what we are considering body horror. Like, is a lost limb or a malformed limb, like a malformed limb should not be body horror. Like there are people every day who are born that way. There are people every day who get into accidents and lose limbs. Like that should not be your body. My thing for body horror is that it's not taking away, it's adding. So like too many teeth, not losing your teeth, but having far too many teeth, like opening a giant monster's maw and seeing a throat that like a sea turtle has. And if you don't know, dear listener, sea turtles have rows and rows of it, like barbs that point backwards down their mouth, because when they eat, they absorb a lot of seawater. And so in order to get rid of the seawater, they expectorate the seawater, and the barbs keep the food from coming back out. It's horrifying. Please look it up.
Sounds horrifying. No, thank you.
But like something like that, as opposed to somebody's teeth falling out, somebody, suddenly growing extra limbs as opposed to losing their limbs. Those are the things that I think, nobody's ever going to grow extra limbs one day, but somebody could spontaneously lose a limb.
Yeah.
Where do they sit when they're listening to a podcast and all of a sudden their body is the subject of horror,
Yeah. That's, I mean, as an abled person, I never would have considered that perspective. So I'm glad that we can even have these discussions, and that they're becoming more normalized and open up, so that we can actually listen to perspectives that I never would have considered.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, whenever I come to these conversations, like as long as people are, and I've said it before, as long as people are coming in good faith, I'm happy to have them.
Yeah.
Because I have done the reading, I've done the work, and I come at the intersection of a couple of marginalizations. So like, I know that my perspective is a unique one, and that somebody who comes from a place of quote unquote perfect privilege isn't necessarily going to have these thoughts, because it's not something that has ever been factored into their worldview. It's not something that they've ever had to think about. It's just like, when SNL does a skit and the joke is that, two men are kissing. Like, I don't care that it's two straight men kissing. That's not funny. It's just two men kissing to me. Like, it's not funny. Like, and so, but, because they don't have that perspective, they're clearly not thinking about what that looks like to people who do. It's just giving those people the opportunity to share their perspective, which is the whole reason I wanted to do my show. I love to, talk about all sorts of wild and crazy stuff. And like, I'm pretty game for whatever, but I want perspectives that don't usually get the time to shine.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But in your mythology series, like, how did you go about, number one, like deciding what you wanted to focus on, what you felt culturally comfortable focusing on, and how did you decide, like, who, especially for something like Atlantis, like, how did you decide who's going to be the best writing staff for something like that?
Yeah. So, especially for Atlantis, what I wanted to do was, I didn't want to do the same old tired platonic version of Atlantis. Like, I wanted to, the beauty of Atlantis is that it's so old that it could really originate anywhere. So I actually brought on some Southeast Asian writers, and some we had a Latino writer and a couple Black diaspora writers. So bringing all those influences there, and then heavily some LGBTQ trans writers as well. And we even have a section in there about role-playing DID from someone who has the
Disorder.
Thank you. Yeah. And I mean, I know that no demographic is a monolith. So
yeah,
hopefully we covered everything. But you know, if there is something in there that we didn't handle well, please like let us know, and you know, maybe create your own version of it, and you know, we'll help you get that out there.
Yeah. And I do think that there's something to be said for that. There's a difference between when you see that somebody genuinely put in the work to try to get it right and stuff just doesn't quite land. There's a difference between that and somebody like what Wizards of the Coast just did, of like, oh, we've hired all of these writers to write these stories and do these things, and then at the last minute changing everything that those writers had done and putting it out anyway.
Yep.
Like, first of all, girl, you don't think people's gonna talk? Like, an NDA only covers so many bases.
Yeah.
Like, that's just like when I've done these non-union projects and they want to act like they're paying everybody the same rate, but they don't think we talk. They don't think we talk about what we're making. They don't think we talk about like what our expenses are. Like, no, bitch, that's not how any of this works.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, it's a community for a reason.
Yeah.
And so there's a big difference in like seeing that somebody actually like tried and missed the mark versus actively didn't actually care. And they're like, we're going to get your money anyway. So and so like, I think that is really important. And that's a really important, you know, thing to be known is, and to make known, like, as a creator, like, hey, like these are the steps we took to make genuine effort. And if you see that, you know, stuff is not feeling good and doesn't hit the mark, like, please let us know and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You have to be constantly learning and striving for better, because otherwise you're stagnant, and stagnant things rot.
Definitely. Yep. And as someone from kind of outside, you know, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to think of everything. And even with a team of like 5 or 6 marginalized creators, they're not going to be able to, their experience isn't going to translate to every experience of every other marginalized person. So I'm not going to pretend like our products are perfect, but I do want to like really stress that, like, we always want to keep growing, always want to keep representing. So please, like, follow us on Facebook or Twitter, and you notice something, call me out. I'll be understanding about it. Just be relatively nice.
Well, and I mean, there's that whole, like, that's the other thing of like, and I think I've briefly mentioned this in podcasts past, like, that's the whole reason that the position of sensitivity readers became a thing. It's like, even if we do have marginalized people on our writing team, like, their experience, like, no group of people is a monolith. And so like their experience and their context for it is going to be different. I mean, regrettably, Black Republicans are a thing. Like, it's like there's twinks for Trump. Like, there's like a whole world of marginalized people who aren't thinking critically and are in it for their own benefit and their own gain, and not the betterment of the community and the world at large. And so, you know, and even if you aren't one of those people, you can still miss the mark. Like, you can be a queer person of color and still, you know, grow up in a relatively privileged lifestyle. It all depends on what your life experience is, what context you're going to be bringing to these things. And so I think, all of those things are very important. Having sensitivity readers, having play tests with groups that aren't just white men, like, you know, making sure the people you have testing your product are reflective of the people that you want to have great experiences in your game. Because let's be honest, white men are going to have fun playing a game regardless, because they're going to make it whatever they want to make it. But if there's intrinsically some stuff that doesn't feel good to, indigenous people, Black people, queer people, any people of color, like, I'm sure there's a lot of Asian folks who look sidelong at the monk class, as they should, they should. Like, it's wild out here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to navigate, but I think that's the value of community, right? We navigate it together.
And I think you're doing the right thing. Like, from what I have gleaned from, our limited time talking together and from my little side searches, like, I think you are definitely on the right track. And I think you're going about it in the right ways. Like, I definitely didn't invite you here to be like, listen here, white man.
Yeah.
That's not what this is. But like, yeah, like, you can't, nothing is ever perfect, least of all progress. But imperfect progress is still progress. And that's something that I have to remind myself of with multiple aspects of my life. And that's something that we have to remind ourselves of as we strive to be better people, better allies, better friends. Like, we're going to make missteps along the way, and all we can do is apologize, learn, and move forward.
Exactly. Yeah. So the mythology stream that we're launching in January.
Yes.
This kind of grew out of that. I'm not able to really write about a lot of those things that I don't have experience about, those non-Eurocentric things. So we really wanted, especially like new creators or creators who haven't really found an audience yet, we want them to come on, talk about the mythology. I believe Kyle will be hosting that, and just share your experience with us, and then maybe make a little money off of it too. Because if we can invest in you, if we can invest in marginalized populations, we're all going to be better for it.
Yeah.
We're all going to have a more rich perspective. So we're still looking for people to come on that stream. We're going to aim for once a week. We want people from, Southeast Asia, South America, indigenous people, African Americans, all sorts of people. So if you'd be interested in being one of those creators, definitely jump on my social medias and let me know, because we'll get you hooked up.
Yes, absolutely. I have a couple of people that just sprung to mind as well. Like, my little indigenous brain is going through all of the people that I know. I'm like, this person, that person, this person. But yeah, and I think that's super important, especially also having people who are intersectional, like Afro-Indigenous is a thing. I know several people who are Black and Indigenous because of reasons. But and that's the thing is people don't realize, I mean, if you listen to my podcast, you realize, because I don't know how many times I've talked about it, but there was a whole there were Black Indigenous people in the Americas before slavery ever happened. There was so much seafaring and trade that the whole reason that the continental US, those tribes had canoes is because of the Taino people in what is now Puerto Rico, the Dominican, the Haitian indigenous populations, that is Afro-Indigenous, and people want to hear Native American and only think about honestly, they only want to think about the United States. They don't want to think about the fact that Mexico, the fact that Canada, the fact that South America, all of that is indigenous. And to be ethnically Mexican and not just nationality Mexican, if you are ethnically Mexican, that is an inherently mixed indigenous identity.
Yeah.
like we traded with each other from Canada to in South America. There was Native American Sign Language was the only universal sign language. Like we all spoke that as far as sign language went, because we didn't speak the same verbal language. Like there's such rich history in indigeneity and across the world. Like you can talk about the Hamon people, you can talk about the indigenous populations of Africa. Like there's so much, and it's so rich, and I'm so glad that like you see the value in it, and that you wanna amplify those voices.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could live with myself if I didn't. So
hey, right answer. No, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. I know we're a little bit shorter than we wanted to be, but I don't want us to run off too long. But thank you so much for joining me, and thank you so much for like doing the work, because it is work to unlearn the things that we've been taught in this world, and to try to drag a community tooth and nail into being better, and to recognizing, hey, these people's voices are worth listening to, and to kind of sit at the doorway to that bus and take some of the hits is valuable.
It's my pleasure. It is. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Tell everybody where they can find you once again for me.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook at Reamlwarp Media, Twitter at Reamlwarp since it wouldn't let me put my whole name in there. And my website is www.realmwarpmedia.com.
And that is Reamlwarp, REALMWARP.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much. As always, dear listeners, dear viewers, I am Lex. You can find me on Twitter under @LexStopTalking, or my podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, called Lex Talk About It. And if you'd like to join the conversation, you can go over to novistudio.io and you can submit both a topic and yourself as guest if you'd like. Enjoy the rest of our stream. I'll see you later.